This is Vader Reviews. We are honored that you would join us. After 2 filler episodes back-to-back, Carl Weathers, aka Apollo Creed, proves he's the champ, directing my favorite episode of this season, Chapter 12, The Siege. As always, spoilers ahead, but before we begin, the Empire would like to wish Sith Duchess Britt Dover a happy birthday. And I would also like to thank my faithful heroes of the Empire, Captain Matthew Nicholson, Snowtrooper Captain Noah Dingley, and I'm just happy to be a Stormtrooper, Adam Jordan, for their generous support. If you have enjoyed our content, please consider joining the Empire today and donate to our PayPal so we can continue to bring you weekly videos. Thanks to the generous support of my Heroes of the Empire and Angels of Hope, we have raised $480 towards replacing my damaged costume. Our goal is $600, so we're almost there. The search for Snips continues as Mando and Muppet Baby try to fix their damaged ship. And while everyone makes a big deal about Baby Yoda, when I was a youngling, I built a pod racer, the fastest ever. I also built a protocol droid to help Mom. I'm sorry I never finished him, gave him coverings and all, but I'm good at fixing things. Always have been. When their attempts to repair the Razor Crest go up in smoke, they stop off for a bit on Navarro, where newly appointed Marshal Dune beats the space poop out of a gang of Aqualish squatters who have taken up residence in what used to be the Mandalorian culvert. And as always, I love seeing classic Star Wars aliens on screen once again. The Aqualish are the same species as Ponda Baba, the butt-chin guy who gave my son a hard time in the Mos Eisley Cantina in episode 4. Turns out they're trying to eat a lava meerkat, and yes, that's really what it's called, which are native to Navarro. So after Marshal Dune saves Timon from the butt-chin, she meets up with Mando and Action Jackson himself, Carl Weathers. And it was great to see the team back together again. Now if Cobb Vanth could just join their crew, they could be a regular Space A-team. One of the things I enjoyed about this episode was seeing how Navarro itself had changed. For example, what used to be the bounty hunter bar has gone from being a wretched hive of scum and villainy to a school, which could arguably also be considered a wretched hive of scum and villainy, but the kids seem pretty happy. Making the teacher a protocol droid was a really nice touch, although she's not much more than an interpreter, not very good at telling stories. Well, not good at making them interesting anyway. Mando and crew drop Baby Yoda off at school to get him out of the way for the rest of the episode like last week. And while it's not the Jedi way, the little green eating machine uses the Force to steal Baby Chakotay's blue Oreos when he won't share. We get our mission should Mando choose to accept it from Grief Karga, who explains how an old Imperial facility has not been abandoned by the Remnant, but if they can take it out, the Empire will no longer have a presence on Navarro. Mando agrees to help in return for repairing his ship. Because I doubt the security is any greater than on Aquilai or Solace, then what they have is most likely directed towards a large-scale assault. Our wizard group of heroes set off on their mission, along with Chubby Abe Sapien from Episode 1 of The Mandalorian, who is now working off his prison sentence as their getaway driver. And as they fight their way through the corridors of the Imperial facility, the plot thickens when they enter a room full of misshapen clones in large holding tanks. A hologram of Dr. Pershing reports to Moff Gideon that he needs more Baby Yoda blood to continue their experiments, as it seems they are hoping to utilize midi-chlorian-enriched blood via transfusion, possibly to create a jar of Snoke's, or in the process of bringing the Emperor back from the grave. So as much as I love this episode, sadly, it does tie into the sequel trilogy. Back to the story. Mando and the gang sneak around and turn off the coolant system for the Imperial Frankenstein lab in a scene which reminded me of my old master shutting down the tractor beam in Episode 4. Just one of many Episode 4 references I truly enjoyed in this chapter. After learning of the Imperial Remnant's dastardly plan to siphon off Baby Yoda's magic blood for experiments like Overhaul from My Hero Academia, Mando rushes off to pick up the little green munchkin from school, fearing for his safety. Meanwhile, Marshal Dune, Apollo Creed, and Chubby Abe Sapien escape the exploding facility in a troop transport, leading to an exciting chase sequence with speeder bikes. And you know I love me some speeder bikes. Grief Karga takes them out with a turret gun in another callback to episode 4, and just when our heroes think they're safe, 3 TIE fighters make an attack run, chasing the transport down a narrow canyon, once again feeling very much like the trench run from episode 4. And you might be thinking, good grief, how will Karga and his crew make it out of this one? But Mando pulls a Captain Solo, swooping in at the last minute with some fancy flying to save the day. After good old Chrome Dome bids his friends a very fond farewell, he sets off to find Snips, not knowing he is being tracked by Moff Gideon, since one of the mechanics was an Imperial spy.
He must have put a homing device on our hull.
But speaking of Moff Gideon, one of the many things that nearly everyone is talking about with this episode are those black Cylon-looking troopers charging like iPhones in their Borg alcoves. You don't get a clear look at them, like Snoke in a Jar earlier, but they appear to be classic Dark Troopers, Imperial battle droids from the popular Dark Forces game from 1995. So it looks like good old Snips might not be done fighting clankers just yet. Back on Navarro, the Space Fuzz are giving Karga some grief over Mando's latest escapades. They try to recruit Marshal Doom, leaving an insignia of the New Republic with her, just in case she changes her mind. And once again, we have another tie-in with the sequel trilogy, as the March of the Resistance theme plays in the background. And though it came from a series of films I truly despise with every fiber of my being, it was still refreshing to hear some John Williams Star Wars music in this series. References to the Poodoo trilogy aside, overall this has still been my absolute favorite episode this season, and it finally feels like the kind of quality storytelling that made me love The Mandalorian in the first place. I had a feeling in Season 1, given that Dr. Pershing wore the Camino insignia on his uniform, and since they talked about extracting genetic material in previous chapters, this was all going to lead to an explanation we should have gotten in the sequel trilogy, namely where the Jar of Snokes came from, and how and when the Emperor returned. It seems pretty clear by now they are planning to use this current series to retroactively fix all of the massive plot holes Jar Jar and his wacky pals created with their failed sequel trilogy. But at this point, it's kind of like putting up a bridges out sign after a school bus has driven off a cliff into a river. While it's a nice thought, it's too late because the damage is already done. From what I understand, next week's episode will be directed by wolf and cowboy hat enthusiast Dave Filoni, who has managed to force his favorite creation into this series, so fingers crossed Snips won't be too annoying and ruin the episode for me. In the end, Chapter 12 is everything I want an episode of The Mandalorian to be. Action, adventure, a great team dynamic between Pedro Pascal, Carl Weathers, and Gina Carano, Baby Yoda being cuter than he's probably ever been, and some great visual callbacks, as well as deep-cut references to the classic EU books and games. So despite its references to the sequel trilogy, I still give this chapter a solid 5 out of 5 Death Stars. The siege is impressive. Most impressive. This has been Vader Reviews. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications, and follow me on Twitter @Vader Reviews. Join the Empire today. You do not yet realize your importance. Share these videos, and together we will rule the internet. And always remember, you don't know the power of the dark side.